This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hello and welcome to Paranormal Pets. I am your host, Brandy Stark, and today we are interviewing sensitive psychic and spiritualist Nancy Weil, who is really very experienced with the supernatural world and has some great pet stories for us today, including an appearance by one of her pet skunks. So that alone should draw you in. And we're actually going to get started with her right after these messages.
How many of you have pets? My hand's raised. Now think about how lucky you are to have such a sweet little pet in your life, and that pet is lucky to have you too. But unfortunately, there are countless pets out there that don't have a home to call their own. However, Bob's from Skechers is trying to change that. So we developed Bob's for dogs and cats to help pets in need. With every purchase of adorable Bob's footwear or fun, stylish apparel, or even the cutest Bob's pet accessories, Skechers makes a donation to Petco Love to help save shelter pets. And with your help, we've already saved the lives of over 1 million pets and raised over $7 million. So while you're getting style and comfort with features like Skechers' famous memory foam cushioning, you're also helping to save an adorable pet in need and helping another lucky owner be connected with a future best friend and companion. Because happiness is having a loving pet by your side. Find Bob's at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, select Petco locations, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
And welcome back. So Nancy Weil is an intuitive who has offered readings to people for over 20 years. She has a very deep connection with animals, from growing up with dogs, rodents, lizards, snakes, turtles, and even a pet alligator in an old bathtub. She has worked in boarding kennels, pet stores, animal shelters, and she was a dog groomer for years. Today, Nancy combines her special spiritual gifts with her love of animals to help foster the connection between pets and their people. Plus, she has a pug. So we already know she's in that top percentile of people. So welcome to the show, Nancy. How are you doing today?
Yeah, but I only have one pug, so I don't quite rank up where you do, Brandy, yet.
No, it counts. It counts. Pug people are special. We always are. Yeah. Anybody will tell you that. Some people call it crazy, but I know they mean special.
That's
so,
right.
And I got to actually see a little bit of her pug, and it was Nancy has been working with the Spirits of St. Petersburg as our newest member, and it's been really interesting because we were doing some EVP sessions listening to electronic voice phenomenon, and I kept hearing this odd noise, and I'm like, what the heck? It sounded like a guttural man's voice trying to say something, and it turned out it was her pug snoring, and I never knew because I'm so used to the pugs that I have that hearing her pug, I was like, is that what it sounds like? It was
not supernatural at all, but we now know why sci-fi movies use pugs in their soundtracks to make noises of alien beings.
Seriously. And pugs are the model for E.T. So they're even the models. So it is just absolutely delightful to have you with us today. This is her first experience with Paranormal Pets and the podcast. And hopefully as we go through our investigations and have more experiences, we'll get some more interviews. But we're going to start with your first experience with a spiritual pet. Would you like to tell us about that?
I would. So everybody's like, why did you have a skunk? I was in high school. It was in a horrible condition at a pet store. So of course I had to rescue it. I didn't even have enough money. I had to borrow the money from my best friend, Mary, who is still one of my best friends to this day. I'm like, give me money. I have to get this skunk out of these awful conditions. So I brought this skunk home and then said, okay, how do I take care of this skunk? And actually had gone away. I had played in the Ohio State Fair band up at their conference. And so I was up there on the fairgrounds, and Dobie started getting sick. So I had someone drive Dopey up to me. We saw the vet on the grounds. And sadly, that night, Dopey passed away.
Oh,
We learned later what had happened. He just had really bad health that we could not overcome from the upbringing. I'd only had him maybe a month at that time.
what
But
a
the
shame.
really odd thing is he had died at 2:23 in the morning. And I stayed up with him in the barn. I got thrown out of the band, by the way, because I was not in where I was supposed to be for the night. And I'm like, yeah, throw me out of the band. I don't care. I'm going to be with the pet. So kind of proud of that. But the odd thing is, once I went home, I was going through a rough, teenage angst kind of a time with boyfriends and things. So losing this pet sort of was pretty devastating. And what happened is every single night I would wake up from a sound sleep at 2:23 in the morning, and I would see Dopey walking around on my bed every single night, night after night. This went on for a few months. I healed from the breakup of the relationship and all those teenage things. And one night Dopey came to me and I said, I think I'm okay now. I think it's okay if you go. And I never saw Dopey again. And
wow.
so it was pretty amazing. It was like I had, reached out to rescue Dopey, and from the other side, Dopey came in to rescue me. And
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's interesting that you talk about a skunk, in part because we haven't had very many skunk ghost stories. The only one I remember is from childhood, and it was in one of those books that was like a compiled thing. And it talked about somebody seeing what looked like a skunk kind of writhing in agony, but then when they approached, it vanished under a door and there was no skunk around. So that was it's a very sad story. It's why I remember it. I'm like, no, not the animals. And I appreciate that you bring it up as well, because one thing that we do with the Paranormal Pets podcast is to also try to emphasize that there are rescue groups out there too. So if you're not aware, and if you'd ever like to get another pet skunk, there is actually a skunk rescue in Florida. So
I know I was actually on their website a couple weeks ago, and I was like, no.
Maybe Dopey will come back.
I know it is almost a blessing that I live in a condo with a pet limit, because if not, this place would be full. It would be just overflowing with animals. I'm just starting to volunteer now with Fluff Animal Rescue here, and
wow,
animals are my world.
I totally get it. I was invited to be a pro guest at a sci-fi convention, which is really sweet. I was like, all right, 25 years of hard work, and I'm finally a pro guest. But it's out in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm like, oh. So trying to leave my house for 3 days is it's actually stressing me out. I'm like, but I hopefully have found somebody, because I had this one pet sitter that was recommended by the vet, and I sent a quick note, and they wrote back, and they're like, oh, it's $30 for one pet. I'm like, oh, sweetie. So here's my list.
Right. How many? Yeah.
But now, did you hear the animal talking to you, or was this something that was kind of intuitive?
It was intuitive. I could see the skunk on my bed walking around. I could see him walking every single night, and I talk to him, and I'd sort of intuit, that comfort, and then I go back to sleep. The animal that I actually felt was a little bit differently. I had a rescue cat, Lily, that we moved into a new house and moved in and left for the weekend, came back on a Sunday, and somebody said, is this your cat? And we're like, no, we have 2 cats inside. And they go, well, it hasn't left your house. I guess it's my cat now. Again, horrible shape, fleas, ear infections, the whole thing. She was just a mess. So we had this wonderful cat, Lily. Actually built her an outdoor enclosure, a play yard, so that she would be safe. I mean, our other cats loved it, but that was because she had been an outdoor feral. And when she died, we were devastated, of course. And a couple of different times at night, I would actually feel her like pawing on the bed, because she slept with us. And it was exactly the way she used to do that every night. And then I would wake up and realize, oh, well, thanks for visiting. And so she would come around at night and climb back into bed into her spot, and I would feel her there.
Oh, that's really, really cool. I always love the fact that you got adopted by the cat, right? I tell folks, you don't adopt cats, they adopt you, right?
Absolutely.
And that's sweet. Now, let me ask you, in your experience with animal communication, what do you find to be the most popular animal I've oftentimes kind of over the years come up with a generalization that cats will either show up for about 6 months or they stay forever. I mean, it seems to be one or the other. And canines are usually about a year. And then every now and again, you get kind of an exception waiting for the owner to pass on. What do you find to be the most popular and the longest lasting type of animal ghost or spirit?
That's so funny because I'm going a whole other way. Because yes, I would not disagree with you, but when I am doing animal communication, oftentimes their deceased pet will come in, and it could have been years, but we've sort of called that animal in and wanted to check in. But an interesting story, when I was a dog groomer, I had somebody who had a dog that died of old age, and I would check in with them. I was still grooming their other dog, and they had adopted a cat. They said to me, I'm telling you, this dog came back as that cat, because this cat sleeps exactly where the dog did, does this weird thing with the food where it picks it up and walks across the room, spits it out, and then eats it, plays in the water bowl like the dog, like all the same behaviors as our dog had. And so I believe that our pets sometimes send us the next one. I don't know that they actually reincarnate into being the next one, but I think they influence them sometimes.
And I think that's true. I've tried to explain to people that sometimes when you see an animal, there's like a little gleam or like a little zap. I mean, there's just something that draws you to them. And I have made a habit of telling my pets that if they wish to come back, they're welcome to, if they wish to be a pet again in the future, I don't want them to feel forced or worried. I mean, it's their choice, but, I would welcome them back if they wanted to come back. And I don't think you've met Neotolamus, but I do think he's got to have a little bit of human, or else he is another pug that I own that's come back, because he is just so very, very unique. So I like the idea that on the spiritual side, an animal will kind of tap another animal. In other words, they'll tap you to get that animal. How does that work?
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes they are that influence to help us heal our heart. As much as our loved ones stay connected to us, I believe, and I've witnessed that our beloved pets also stay connected to us. And I think that's the part that surprises people so much when I'm doing, readings for them, because they expect to see, or hear from mom or dad or somebody in their life. But I had a reading where I was doing this reading, and I brought her mother in from spirit, and then all of a sudden, like, her dog shows up. So I'm talking to her about her dog, and the dog's, sharing with me. And we got all done with the reading, and she runs down. Her friend was waiting. She's like, "You'll never believe who was here in my reading." And then she starts talking about the dog. And I'm like, "And your mom?"
I love that. It reminds me of my own mother, because there was one time she actually said, if the pugs and I were ever in an endangered situation, I don't know who you would pick, me or them. I'm like, you better just hope that doesn't happen. But that's awesome and I think in part, and that it's such a different energy between a mother and a pet, because your mother has kind of that unconditional maternal love, but it has conditions, which is kind of weird. Whereas pets, they have that unconditional love, and I swear they train us. I guess mothers train us and pets train us. And so maybe it's just that unique interaction. And, but that is really, really exciting. Does that happen often for you, where you're reading for somebody and somebody's pet comes in with a relative?
I don't want to say often, but it happens often enough where, an animal will just sort of show up in the room, and I'm like, well, okay, this must be yours. And so I will relate to them that message. And generally the animal oftentimes is, number one, thanking them for the years of care, reassuring them that they're fine. And if the owner had to make that decision to euthanize the pet is generally reassuring them they made the right decision. Yeah. Because we struggle with it, but they don't. Animals don't have the same hangups about dying that we do. They completely accept that they're going to leave this physical body, and it's cool with them. I've been helping a few different people. One of my friends, their dog was young and diagnosed with cancer. I actually have gone through that twice in the last year with friends whose dogs had cancer at a young age. And I would tune into them throughout the process. How are they doing? Where's their energy level at? What do they need? And helping the owner understand that pet's needs. And after they pass, of course, we touch in with them again, like, how you doing over there? and they're fine. They have no hangups about being over there. They're grateful for the care they had. They tell us, I'm going to be checking in on you, and just really reassure that pet parent that
Absolutely.
that they're okay.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I think with this podcast, the greatest response that I've had from people is usually kind of that grief response where they've had to euthanize a pet and they always feel that question, did I do the right thing? And of course, yesterday was actually the 1-year anniversary of Achilles, who was the elder paranormal pug that I had. His brother died 3 years prior, and Achilles, I did have to euthanize because just that decline in the body was so dramatic overnight. And we already knew he was on his way. I didn't think he had much time left, but he couldn't let go himself. And it would have been a long, long death. So, you have to make that decision. And I did, I hired Laps of Love, and, I will advocate for them. They're expensive, but it was wonderful to have them come here and he could pass it home. But, it is that agonizing element. And I think these podcasts really, at least I hope, they bring some comfort to people, because I think humans really do have, particularly in modernity, we have a different attachment to life, and death has become very clinical. Whereas I think with an animal, perhaps with the more instinctual levels to a certain degree, yeah, I agree that they are definitely, they know that they came in, they know that they will go out, and they transition better than we do. We fight a lot. So I think that's important. I think that's an important message to pass on too. But what we're going to do on that note, we will get to some other ghost stories and pet stories in a minute, but we are actually going to pause here for just a second. Please listen to our sponsors, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There is no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms, and our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Did you hear that? Our commercials have mysteriously disappeared. Paranormal Pets is back with our haunted host, our ghost host,
Brandy Stark.
And welcome back. Just in case y'all hear this, I'm using microphone this time, so it's a little bit different, but I do have some snoring pugs in the background, so I would take more offense, except when I do teaching from home, I do something called Live Online, where I literally teach online a class online for State College Florida students, and they're at home watching the computer. And I do my humanities classes sometimes this way, and all the pugs go to sleep and they start snoring. And I'm like, oh, come on, guys. You're learning very valuable information. So anyway, I apologize if
I have that all the time. I'll be on for a business call, and they'll be like, what is that noise? I can't even hear it anymore. And I'm like, oh, my pugs sleep at my feet.
And it's funny how we get so adapted to that sound. I think as an owner, you're right. We just don't hear it. I mean, it's just such a part of the household. It's
Brandy,
great.
we couldn't sleep at night if we heard it, because our whole bed is filled with it. So
that's right. Yeah, I try to tell people there's something called ASMR, which has gained some popularity in the past couple of years since the pandemic, as people keep getting more stressed, which is kind of like gentle sounds that people listen to, and they're a little off kilter. And I try to explain to people that pugs are my version of ASMR. So if they're not sleeping and snoring, then I'm like, what's wrong? Right. So, it's great stuff. Now, you mentioned when we were talking prior to the show that you actually also communicated with a pet horse named Shadow.
Right.
So what happened there?
This story is amazing. So my sister-in-law has horses, and her best friend had a horse named Shadow. And when her best friend was diagnosed with cancer, Shadow accompanied her almost as a therapy horse through the whole thing. to the point that even once she was in hospice, they brought her over to see her horse and sit with her. They were incredibly connected. And Debbie passed, and the horse has remained with my sister-in-law for the rest of its life. We'll live there on the farm and has a wonderful, wonderful life. But both the horse and my sister-in-law, of course, miss her very, very much. So on her birthday, I was asked to do a little reading and see what's going on. And so I touched in with each of the horses there at the farm and gave my sister-in-law different information from each horse, what it liked eating, what it was upset about, all of those things. They have an escape artist horse who was kind of pissed because she figured out how to make sure, because it would open up its stall door and then everybody else's. And she'd come out in the morning and they're all just, wandering around. It's fence, it's paddock, but still. So this horse was
they're smart.
Mad because she had figured out how to keep it, locked in safely for the night. And when I went to Shadow, and we know that her former, owner, was her birthday. And so we were just sort of touching in, and it was very clear that the owner came to me as well, and the horse misses her very much. But she told me she comes and sits on her at night. It's as if she's riding her, and she comes and visits, and she sits on her and, sits by her, and they spend time together when the barn is quiet at night. And it was such a lovely thing to see them still united, still together. So, and again, right? First, we were talking about deceased pets coming to visit their people. Well, guess what? Deceased people come and visit their pets.
Gotcha.
And we know that because I, work with people who are grieving. And again, I've been told the story, different versions, same story, that all of a sudden the dog will alert and start looking at the chair where, the deceased owner used to always sit, or will start wagging its tail like, oh, they're here, just like they always would. But of course, there's nobody in the room. So we get to know that it goes both ways, right?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, there was a television show on a while back, and I'm not a big proponent of the ghost hunting shows, but sometimes when people are sitting there and they're telling their story, because that's kind of the information that I like, the subjective, but the experiential. And it was a story about a dog that had been put up for adoption because her owner died. The wife, I guess, had made a deathbed promise to the husband who died. So he was on his deathbed, and she promised to take care of the dog, but she really couldn't. So she put it up for adoption through a shelter. This woman adopted the dog, and apparently the owner would come and visit the dog. And it took her a while to kind of understand what was going on. But I think she did have somebody come in, a psychic come in. And once they realized what was going on, she just said, "This is what's happened. I've adopted your dog, and I'm here, and I love her so much." And the guy was fine and never visited again. But it was that, checking in on the pet to make sure that everybody was okay. And I think the ghost was confused because his wife had promised him and she didn't keep that promise. So I think that was the caveat.
Yeah. And I've had also where, you do mediumship and you connect someone to a loved one and their pet is with them on the other side.
That's sweet too.
That's also wonderful that those special ones, those special pets that we just carry in our heart that hope that we're going to be together again. I had a dog that was she was a Delta certified therapy dog, and she and I were partners. We worked together, and she was amazing, and have missed that dog since the day she died of old age. And to know that she'll be around, and that she'll be with me is incredibly comforting.
Well, and it's funny because I know people will say, "I'm not going to the other side unless my pets are there." So, I'm kind of looking forward to having a reunion someday. Yeah. And it does kind of give us something. I mean, as macabre as it may be, it does give us something to look forward to, kind of in a different manner, and I think that's important too, that folks understand. And just kind of the last few minutes, can you tell us a little bit about how this works for you? So I know you've mentioned that you intuit and that you can see them, but how exactly do these animals interact, or what is your sensation with this?
Great question. So it's generally, So it's like a thought form. It's an impression you get. So it's like you kind of see the animal, right?
Right.
Sometimes I just get a feeling of size. I may not be able to say that's a Cocker Spaniel, but I may get a feeling of size. and a personality will come in, and I'll feel what that personality is. And then they speak to me, air quotes, right, in thought.
Right.
So I'll be sort of like asking the pet, right, what is their message? Why are they here? And it's almost like a thought form comes in, right? And maybe I'll see the food bowl and them, loving the food, or nope, not happy. They changed my food. And so I'll get these thought forms and pictures that come in. And through that then comes my interpretation process, right? That this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. Many times the owner will confirm it. Like, yep, I did that. Yep, totally is. And so it's just sort of oftentimes it's that feeling. So maybe I'll see the dog taking long walks with the owner out, in the woods, and they love it and they just feel happy and they feel free. And I'm like, oh, they're showing me that they love doing this. And the owner will be like, yeah, that's their favorite thing. They get so excited. So a lot of times as pet parents, we want to have confirmation that we're doing all we can for our pet. And after they pass, we want confirmation that we did right by them. We want that comfort to know that we did make right choices. And so it doesn't matter to me if the pet is deceased or the pet is alive. It's still that communication comes in that same way of that sort of thought form.
So it sounds like pets think more in pictures perhaps than words.
That's how they impress it to me.
Okay, that is interesting, because of course recently there's been a debate, and part of the idea behind paranormal pets is that animals are cognizant and they are self-aware, but there's been this element of humanity in which there's a new study as to how people actually interpret thought. And I guess some people are completely visual, some people get words, and then some people don't get anything, which is really wild, and yet here we are and we're still kind of expressing more or less verbally and whatnot in the same manner. So I find that intriguing with animals, that perhaps for them it's a more visual element that they can associate with, or a more sensory element, eating the food.
Yeah. And I think for those of us with our pets who are here, they get it. You just have a picture of, oh, I'm about to leave the house, or I'm about to take my dog for a walk, and they'll be waiting at the front door. Right?
Yes.
Like they already pick up on our thought forms, and we haven't said a thing. We haven't even stood up yet, from the couch to move there. And they read our thought forms. And so they know, they sense what's going on. There's stories of pets who know exactly when the owner is going to come home, even if they come home different times a day. So it's not like every day at 4:00, I know to be by the door. It's like they know like 5 minutes before that owner comes home, and they're waiting by the door, even though it could be random times. So we really are more connected than we think.
I tend to agree. And that's actually quite funny, because Neoptolemus, once again, my little golden pug, he knows when my mother's coming. He loves her so much. And she also knows when she's going to eat. It's the weirdest thing. He can be out in the backyard by the fence with the doors closed, with me and mom in the house, and he knows when she is getting food. I'm like, and he comes bolting back to the doors and lets me know that he's there. And he bolts right on into the house, and he's not even in here. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I think he can read her mind pretty well. And he also has her trained, just so you know. He sits on her lap, and she will feed him bites off of her own plate. So he sits on her lap and gets hand fed. And I'm like, and then she's like, that's right. She's like, I'm not spoiling your pug. I'm like, oh, Mom. But it is. And that would explain something. And I wonder, and I've oftentimes postulated that just like people, some animals are more sensitive than others, that you do have gifted animals that are more in tune with their human, or more able to sense things. That's the whole point of having a paranormal pug, is trying to pick the most sensitive out of my little pug Grumble. So that's really, really cool. Now, how can people contact you? I know you've got an email address. Do you want to go ahead and give us the email?
Sure. So my email is my name and some random letters that aren't random, but my email is Nancy Weil TLA. So NancyWeil TLA Tango Lima Alpha @gmail.com.
Is that short for the Laughing Academy?
It is. So my other part of my world is being a speaker and studying humor and laughter. And so I have a company called the Laugh Academy, and teach people how to stress less and laugh more. And
That's
I
awesome.
love it. I love it. Yeah.
And it's funny because you're one of those people, I think we're probably two of a kind in this sense, where you have all of these different things going on and folks are like, but when do you sleep? And you're like, I don't sleep, thank you. Or I do sleep, but I sleep just
People
fine.
asked me that. And years ago, suddenly it hit me because, again, working full time at a job I love, doing readings, having a speaking company, all of these things we do. And everyone would always say that. And all of a sudden I realized it's because I love everything I do.
That's
it's not
it.
work when we're loving it. I don't mind staying up and, working on a project if it's something that's engaging and something that fills my soul. And I've been blessed to fill my life with that. And, through the readings and the work I do with people, it brings them comfort. It brings them guidance. I always say when I do readings, I motivate, I clarify, and sometimes I nag. But I'm not the one nagging, it's the other side. But
you're just the voice of the nagging.
Right. I'm just the conduit here bringing the message, but it helps people. And when we can serve others, there's just nothing better. And when I say serve others, I mean our fur friends as well as, humans.
That's right.
There's just nothing better.
I agree. And actually, that is a wonderful point for us to go ahead and wrap up this episode. But I want to thank you so much for being on here. Is there any other information that you would like to plug while we're here? Any other way for folks to contact you? Anything important coming up?
Well, I'm always available if people want to book a reading. I am in the process of building my website for that, so you'll be able to schedule online. But for now, if people are interested, they can send me a text at 716-908-9154. Website isn't quite built yet because refer back to how busy both of us are. So I have it outlined in my head. I just haven't gotten into the web designer yet.
Don't feel too badly. The Spirits of St. Petersburg just updated its website. You've been part of this group long enough to kind of see that transition. And man, it took forever. And I'm still trying to figure out all of the buttons now. So God bless Viva, who's a member of the Spirits team who actually cultivated all this and did the transfer. But it's fun. But once it's up and running, people will be able to catch you easily. And you've now given them 2 great points of access. So hopefully in the future, as we go on, we'll be able to get you back on the show. Maybe we'll get some good Spirits of St. Petersburg interaction with the pets. And please do feel free to check out the Spirits of St. Petersburg updated website at www.spiritsofstpete.com. And Nancy, we will communicate one way or the other, right? I'll send you my thoughts at a later time. And thank you again so much. Everybody out there, happy hauntings and stay safe.
Pet Life Radio presents Paranormal Pets, where you can always expect the unexpected. Each week we'll discuss all aspects of weird or spiritual animal encounters, ghosts, totems, psychic animals, animal souls, animal angels, and animals in religion, with a little cryptozoology thrown in. Step into the supernatural world of pets every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.